Could you tell us why is it taking so long to make a definitive assessment about these? And the fact that it's taking so long leads a lot of people suggesting that U.S. has a double standard when it comes to applying the law with Israel. Does the U.S. have a double standard?
The report that we're putting out today presents a factual, systematic account of human rights records across nearly 200 countries and territories. Each one is held to the same standard.
The American Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, the proud friend of Israel and the biggest defender of Israel's human rights violation and war crimes in Gaza, has come out and shamelessly presented something that he calls America's Annual Report on Human Rights for 2023. He's actually giving us impression, and he still thinks that we should continue to believe that America is a defender of human rights.
I am pleased to be here to launch the 2023 Human Rights Report. At the end of last year, we marked the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, affirming the fundamental idea that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. I am pleased to be here to launch the 2023 Human Rights Report. At the end of last year, we marked the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, affirming the fundamental idea that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights.
And he has singled out all those countries where human rights have been violated in the year gone by, and the countries who have made significant progress in that direction. If you see what it says about Israel, I mean, obvious question would be that what does the report say about Israel? Because here is a country which has used American arms. America has armed this country, the rogue regime, to carry out gross human rights violations, war crimes, genocide with impunity. And why do we say that? I'm not saying that. Their own ministers, their own assessment now confirms that more than 30,000 people have been killed by Israel. Majority of them are women and children. And as we speak, more and more mass graves are being dug up, taking the death toll to new height. And as I said time and again, that we are looking at a death toll in excess of 100,000. But let's come back to the report, what it says about Israel. You know, the wording is very important. I had absolutely no desire to give importance to this shameless individual. Disgrace to humanity. I wish I had a chance to be in his press conference and embarrass him publicly. Embarrass him publicly because that's what he deserves. You have to see, how sinister they are and how cunning they are in their use of languages to defend their ally. So he says, the conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza continues to raise deeply troubling concerns for human rights. Right? So far, so good. Hamas's brutal terrorist attacks on October 7th killed around 1,200 people, took approximately 230 Israeli and foreign hostages, and included appalling abuses, including gender-based violence and sexual violence. Appalling abuses. Just remember the word appalling abuses, just to emphasize the severity of the crime. And gender-based violence and sexual violence. We know by now from the United Nations report that there was no sexual violence, or at least there hasn't been any evidence to substantiate that Hamas fighters, they committed sexual violence. Anyway, now it comes to Israel. As Israel exercises its right to self-defense. So cute. It's already exonerated. Even before you mention anything about Israel, you have given them clean sheet. Israel is exercising its right to self-defense. So caveat is there. As Israel exercises its right to self-defense, we have made clear that it must conduct military operations in accordance with international law and take every feasible precaution to protect civilians. They write this, and we have played you the videos after videos from the press conferences held by their minions in the State Department, where they were categorical in their defense for Israel when they were asked that, in your assessment, do you think that Israel has committed war crimes or genocide? And their answer was emphatic no. So what's the point of this line? We continue to urgently raise concerns surrounding the deaths of and injuries to tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians in Gaza, including women, children, persons with disabilities, and other vulnerable persons. We repeatedly have pressed concerns about Palestinian civilians' access to humanitarian assistance, displacement of the majority of the population of Gaza, and the unprecedented number of journalists killed. We have repeatedly condemned Hamas's abhorrent misuse of civilians and civilians' infrastructure as human shields. So the use of condemnation is only reserved for Hamas, not for Israel. Even though the report says that Israelis have killed number of journalists, I think they forgot to give the figures. It's close to 100. Close to 100. This is, I can't think of any conflict where so many journalists were killed. And they were killed systematically, not accidentally. But there's no mention of that. There's no condemnation for that. So there's absolutely no condemnation for Israel. Word condemnation is reserved for Hamas and Palestine. And of course the report is gone to talk about Iran and Afghanistan and what is happening and how the women rights are in danger there. They're being erased from public life. Women in Afghanistan are being erased from public life. Seriously? We know you are shameless, Anthony Blinken. But this shameless? You are concerned about women being erased from public life. Of course concerning. But you are not concerned about women being erased altogether? Not just from this generation, but the coming generation as well. Completely erased because they were killed? There's no mention of that in the report. Listen to this shameless individual first.
All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Those words, 75 years ago, enshrined a wide range of universal rights: civil and political, economic, social, cultural. The right to express ourselves freely, to choose our leaders, to worship as we wish, the right to education, to just labor conditions. Standing up for freedom and human rights is simply the right thing to do. But defending and promoting these inalienable and universal rights is also profoundly in our national interest. Countries that respect human rights are more likely to be peaceful, prosperous, stable. The report that we're putting out today presents a factual, systematic account of human rights records across nearly 200 countries and territories. Each one is held to the same standard: developed and developing countries, competitors, as well as allies and partners. While the report focuses on human rights challenges abroad, we recognize that the United States faces its own shortcomings. The strength of democracies like ours is that we address those shortcomings, those imperfections, openly, without sweeping them under the rug. The report illustrates that there is much work to be done to uphold the rights set out in the Universal Declaration. We once again see human rights and the rule of law under stress in more ways and in more places across the globe. Governments continue to lock up citizens who challenge those in power and call for a better future, from Belarus to Venezuela. Many are young. Of the roughly 1,000 political prisoners in Cuba, the average age is just 32. Tragically, as we saw with Alexei Navalny's unjust imprisonment in Russian penal colony, incarceration can come with horrific conditions, with abuse, even death.
He talks about right to education. Who will tell this shameless individual that what about the right to education of over 2.5 million people in Gaza? When you provided bombs to Israel's rogue regime to demolish every single educational institution, so that this generation and the generation after, they never get to educate themselves. And you, of all people, have this audacity to talk about right to education in your report. You have the audacity to criticize Russia, as he says in his intro, about the human rights situation, which is concerning for any layperson, any defender of human rights. But of all the people, America doesn't have the right to talk about that. You are concerned about the treatment being meted out, the human rights campaigner Alexei Navalny in Russia, but you have zero shame about admitting that what your own treatment has done to another journalist, Julian Assange. So Alexei Navalny's human rights should be protected, but Julian Assange's is not. You are disgrace to humanity. And the reason why I'm recording this video is not to amplify what this joker had to say. It is to make people aware who may have been under impression, like many of us, that America was a defender of human rights. They should know that America is not. On one hand, you are presenting this report. And by the way, this report comes just few days after America announced a special package of over $25 billion of arms deal to Israel so that, Israel can go and kill more Palestinian children and women for fun. Do you really want us to take your report seriously? No! As at least one reporter had the courage and to pose this question to Blinken. Of course, what do you expect Blinken to say? Do you think he'll admit that yes, America has a double standard? But nonetheless, well done to this reporter for at least asking this question.
And coming back to the report again, in this report, you have a sentence saying Israelis operating in Gaza took no publicly visible steps to identify and punish officials accused of committing rights abuses. The accusations about IDF's military conduct in Gaza have piled up. They include using food as a weapon, targeting civilian infrastructure, indiscriminate bombing, something even the president has said is taking place. So I'm wondering, we know you've got ongoing processes about this, but could you tell us why is it taking so long to make a definitive assessment about these? And the fact that it's taking so long leads a lot of people suggesting that U.S. has a double standard when it comes to applying the law with Israel. Does the U.S. have a double standard? Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Amira. Let me start with the last part of the question. Do we have a double standard? The answer is no. As this report makes clear, in general, as we're looking at human rights and the condition of human rights around the world, we apply the same standard to everyone. And that doesn't change whether the country in question is an adversary, a competitor, a friend, or an ally. And that's hugely important.
So this episode, this Gaza, crisis has truly exposed America. And if these jokers think that we will continue to take them seriously and their commitment towards human rights, then they are blissfully mistaken. Nobody is going to take them seriously. It's only a matter of time before they are fully and truly exposed. And that's why we as independent journalists are determined to do that. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.